advise us immediately and we seated and their faces will not be visible. So can I just check formally if anybody at all is concerned about appearing on a live stream on YouTube? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Now, members, we are attempting for the third time this session to use Q to Speak. We know we've had some problems in the last two meetings. It appears that most of the issues are being addressed. The only thing we might find is the odd microphone might crackle, but that's what we have to deal with. If we do, we'll deal with it when we get there. So thank you for that. Right, turning to the formalities of the agenda, can I have apologies for absence, please, Helen?
Chair, you have apologies from councillors Dicker, Hood, Miller-Jones and David Smith.
Thank you. Members, can I see an indication if there are any substitutes? Councillor Higgins.
Yes, I'm substituting for David Smith.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Lynch. Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Right, the third item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of July. Are there any comments or corrections to that? Could I have a proposer then on that basis? Councillor Whittam, and could I have a seconder, please? Councillor London. So proposed by Councillor Whittam without amendments and seconded by Councillor London. Can I see a show of hands for approval, please?
That motion is carried.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Now, declarations of interest, and members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable or non-registrable interest, which they have in any item of business on the agenda, and that must be no later than when that item is reached, and when appropriate to leave the meeting prior to discussion and voting on the item. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have declared interest in the planning application DC 221693 full land at Brandon Road, Eriswell. I have expressed my opinion, which shows it in the pack, and I cannot make an impartial decision on this, so I will leave the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Councillor London.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to disclose that my wife has recently taken a job at Bidwells. We are not talking about anything that comes up in DCC, but I want that out in the open, just in case there are any accusations.
Thank you, Councillor London. I don't think that precludes you from taking part.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the land at Brandon Road in Eriswell. And Joanne is the case officer, so you can begin your presentation when you're ready, Joanne.
Good morning. The application brought before committee this morning is for the temporary operation of a concrete batching plant. Members will likely remember this application as it was deferred from April's committee to allow clarification on a number of areas. The machinery for the batching plant has already been moved to site but is not yet in use. The application was originally brought to committee following consideration at delegated panel. The site is outside of any development boundary and is in land classified as countryside. The application site is set within Lakenheath Recycling Centre. The site is adjacent to Brandon Road, the A165. To the north of the site is Lakenheath Clay Target Centre, and to the west is RAF Lakenheath. The recycling centre recycles aggregates associated with the construction industry. This includes the importing, screening, sorting and storage of soil and aggregates. The recycling centre was given permission through a lawful development certificate of existing use from Suffolk County Council in 2014, and the site has been in use as a recycling centre for aggregates since 2004. There is a public right-of-way to the rest of the site, which runs adjacent to the highway. The site is within the 1,500 metre buffer zone around those parts of the SPA which support or are capable of supporting the Stone Curlew and Natural England SSI impact risk zone. Natural England and our ecology officer have both confirmed that the proposal would not have an adverse impact upon the Stone Curlew. The reasons for this were discussed in some depth at the previous committee, but briefly, the main reason relates to the use being commercial and not residential, and so would not attract further visitors, dog walkers or pets to the SPA in the same way that a housing development would. The batching plant would be located to the rear of the recycling centre, approximately 345 metres from the western boundary adjacent to the highway. As stated, the land is classified as countryside, and as such policy DM5 would be relevant. DM5 permits development of economic growth and expansion of business and enterprise in the countryside. Policy CS6 also looks to support sustainable economic development and highlights RAF Lakenheath as a priority. The batching plant would be used in conjunction with and support the existing well-established commercial use of the site. The concrete would be used by the adjacent RAF bases, the other RAF bases within the region and local agricultural users. The plan illustrates the proposed batching plant, loading area in which the hardcore materials will be placed, and to the left the silos for storage. The concrete would be dispatched into vehicles which would drive underneath the central section. The plan illustrates the elevations of the batching plant. The batching plant would have a length of 33 metres and width of 20 metres. The highest part of the development would be the silos, just here, which would be 17 metres in height. This plan is simply illustrating further details of the batching plant, showing the loading area. And further sectional plans illustrating the batching plant, specifically the central area where the lorries will drive through to receive the concrete. As said, the application was deferred from April's committee as members considered further clarity was required in respect of traffic movements associated with the development, the routing of vehicles using the development, the destination of the end product being concrete, and the noise coming from the development. Each of these will now be addressed in turn. Traffic movements to the batching plant. 3 traffic movements a week will be generated to bring the cement mix to the site. 80 traffic movements will be associated with the batching plant, but there will be no increase in traffic movements overall. As I said, 80 vehicles a week would be associated with the batching plant. The vehicles would be taking the concrete off-site, so there would be no increase because rather than taking aggregates off-site to other concrete batching plants, they would simply be taking the concrete off as it is produced with the batching plant on-site. The applicant has highlighted the ongoing need for concrete for local developments, specifically RAF Lakenheath, which is adjacent to the site. Currently, concrete for this site is bought from a number of other batching plants further afield. The traffic movement would reduce these significantly as the batching plant itself is located adjacent to Gate 8 of RAF Lakenheath. The traffic to the site would not increase above the level the site is already permitted. The lorries will carry the concrete instead of aggregate, but this would still fall within the tonnage allowed by the existing EA permit. Highways have not objected to the development, and they have said that there's no concerns and that the proposal would not have a detrimental impact upon highway safety. Highways have further stated that the site has good visibility displays, is suitable for the type of vehicles using the site, and that the A1065 is capable of absorbing the low level of additional traffic produced by this development. Now, this is a map supplied by the applicant, and what this illustrates is the distances the concrete is currently brought into this area for local development. Obviously, concrete has a short lifespan from when it is produced, and it has to be used within a matter of hours. So it's better for any construction to have a site close by producing concrete. The routing of the traffic movements. Highways have stated that it would not be justifiable to impose a routing agreement or restrict lorries using the development to a certain route. There is no travel plan or any restrictions currently in place for the recycling centre and the existing traffic to it. The development would only generate a very modest increase in traffic. No specific routes are known at this time, as the concrete will go to individual users as and when. Destination of the end product. No exact figures have been given by the agent as to the percentage of concrete going to any specific development, and that is because it will be driven and determined by market forces. However, they have stated that they will be providing concrete or expect to be providing concrete to RAF bases, Lakenheath, Beltwell and Mildenhall, and to local agricultural users. It was discussed in the previous committee that there is unknown whether further development would be taking place at RAF Lakenheath, but we have now been in receipt of a screening opinion from the RAF, which does express that they do have an intent to undertake further development between 2024 to 2030 at least. Noise from the batching plant. The cumulative noise would be less than 1 decibel. The ecology officer has confirmed that the increase would not have a detrimental impact upon the SPA or any protected species. Public Health and Housing have also raised no objection and have recommended a condition to prevent any adverse noise pollution. And also point out that the site is immediately adjacent to RAF Lakenheath and falls within the noise contours associated with the military base. So this slide is taken from the shooting range adjacent or to the north of the site. It's taken from the car park of the shooting range. As detailed, you will see the silos projecting being the highest part of the development and the countryside surrounding the site. The batching plant, as I said, is set within the recycling centre itself, some 345 metres from the boundary with the highway. Okay. And this is taken again from the highway leading into the shooting range, and it's just looking to illustrate the visibility of the batching plant from views within the wider landscape. So you'll see the batching plant is just there. Oh, sorry. This was taken from the highway, the A1065. And as I said, because this is located within the batching plant, officers are of the opinion that where it is situated within the recycling plant would serve to reduce views from the highway or reduce the impact from the highway itself. This is the existing entrance to the recycling plant itself. As I said, highways have raised no concerns and have said this is completely suitable. and practical for the vehicles proposed to use the batching plant, and have no concerns in that regards. These views from the west of the site adjacent to the highway. So the batching plant can be seen within the context of the recycling centre, including the storage piles of aggregates. And again, this is taken from the A1605, but just serving to illustrate again how the batching plant, which is here, will be seen within the context of the existing recycling plant itself. So in terms of consultation responses, both Eriswell and Brandon Town Council object. They have objected regarding concerns for pollution, air pollution and dust, highway safety, access, increase in traffic, wheel washing, and impact upon the stone curlew and noise concerns. Ward members, Councillor Kelly has raised concerns, again relating to traffic, wheel washing facilities, impact on the recycling plant or the batching plant on the landscape and views from the A1065. And Councillor Ritham has also raised concerns in regards to the landscape, ecology, and that the existing site is unsightly and messy. Councillor Lucanig raised concerns regarding HGVs travelling through Brandon. To clarify, there are wheel washing facilities already on site. The applicant has given details of the policies used to ensure that all vehicles exiting the site use the wheel washing facilities. And in fact, the wheel washing facilities have been positioned adjacent to the weighbridge, and this does ensure that any vehicles pass through it before they actually exit the site. The development relates only to the batching plant, so it would be difficult to condition wheel washing, as it would only relate to the vehicles going to the batching plant itself, not all the other vehicles using or exiting the existing recycling centre, because there are no wheel washing conditions attached to the original consent for the overall recycling centre. The impact upon landscape and ecology has already been addressed. And as we've already seen there, the applicant has provided evidence and details of ongoing development at RAF Lakenheath, although it must be said that we wouldn't be looking to impose conditions for an end user, a specific end user. See, there's no objections from highways, ecology, public health and housing or waste. The highways officer has objected, as the batching plant has the potential to cause moderate or adverse harm, but you will see that this has been carefully assessed within the report and against the relevant policy DM13. No further objections, including from Natural England and the RSPB. In conclusion, the proposed development would bring economic benefits by supporting the existing recycling centre and upgrading works to the adjacent RAF base, which is one of the largest employers in the region, as well as supplying local agricultural users and the other nearby RAF bases in the region. As such, the proposal is considered to comply with the aims of DM5 and CS5. The impact of the development on the landscape has been carefully considered, especially in light of the concerns raised by the landscape officer. DM13 permits development which would have an adverse impact upon landscape character, where the harm will not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefit of the proposal. Development will be permitted subject to other planning considerations. There have been no concerns expressed from the highway officer in terms of highway safety, and the proposal will only have a minimal increase in traffic to the site. The ecology officer and Natural England have no objections to the proposal and have stated the development would not result in any harm to the stone curlews. As such, it is considered that on balance, officers would consider that the proposal should be supported. and a recommendation of approval is given.
Thank you very much indeed, Joanne. So we turn our attention to public speakers. We have Councillor Victor Lukanuk, who is here speaking in his capacity as an objector, not as a ward member. He is an objector. Then we have a written statement from Councillor Gerald Kelly, which Helen will read out. And then we've got in the applicants David Huxted and Ryan Holbrook. And we'll take them in that order. So, Councillor Lukanuk, you've got 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and as usual, I will be within my time slot. We've got two issues here. Firstly, the destruction of an SPA, that's a special protected area, and secondly, the constant convoys of HGVs from Brandon to the Eriswell site. The SPA, special protected area, there was a time when you could leave the base, RAF Lakenheath, and you could look out on a rare and precious Breckland Sea. Not anymore. It's been destroyed and it won't get fixed in my lifetime. Page 20 of the report, paragraph 23, the landscape officer objects to the application and their comments, and I quote, "We do have reservations regarding the proposal on the local landscape." As councillors, Mr. Chairman, one of our strategic priorities is the well-being of our environment. Have we no concerns regarding our unique Breckland landscape? And where is Natural England on this? They insist Brandon does not encroach on the SPA, yet opposite the base we see the rape and destruction of a special Breckland landscape. This has gone on unchecked and we should be ashamed of allowing it to happen. Second issue, Mr. Chairman, the HGVs. And I will mention the aggregate facility in Brandon run by the same operator, so they are inextricably linked. They informed us that about 180 trucks leave Brandon Station over a 5-day period. Suffolk County Council, with the permission from Norfolk County Council, put in place an ANPR traffic count, and the official figure was 459 trucks leaving the station over a 5-day period. And I've given you the official report from Suffolk County Council. That will give us an official figure of about 500,000 tonnes of aggregate per annum travelling through Brandon, with all its inherent problems. And I have some of the images if you care to look at them. But that's why Norfolk County Council insisted as a planning condition that trucks leaving the station must not enter the high street in Brandon. This condition presently is being ignored. With the batching plant, you have had no official HGV count. You have had no lorry management plan, so how can you be expected to make an informed decision? Page 29, paragraph 87, it states that 80 traffic movements will be generated weekly with the scheme. I do have my doubts, Mr. Chairman. The Brandon facility is much smaller in comparison to the Eriswell site, and that generates 460 truck movements over a 5-day period. Mr. Chairman, once again, one of our priorities sits with the local plan to deal with the HGV problems. And some of us worked on the local plan. So we need to be careful here, otherwise we may be accused of double standards.
Victor, I'm very sorry, but you have reached your 3 minutes. Can you finish up in one sentence?
I can finish off in 10 seconds, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
thank
if
you
I
very much
may.
indeed.
The report informs us that aggregate is being brought in from Dagenham. That's page 30, paragraph 9. Dagenham to Lakenheath is 80 miles, M11, A11, A14, A1065. What is that doing to our carbon footprint, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, thank you.
And just finally, Mr. Chairman, if I may please, in my opinion, the batching plant is in the wrong place at the wrong time and a serious blot on the landscape, and I strenuously oppose the application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Victor. Right, we have a written statement from Councillor Gerald Kelly, which Helen will read out.
My apologies for being unable to attend and my thanks for reading this statement. I merely wish to add to my previous comments by looking at the specifics in the officer's report. Paragraph 27 says that the issues to be considered in the determination of the application are the principle of development, impact upon character of the area and surrounding landscape, ecology and highways. Frankly, this application falls on all counts. In terms of development, paragraphs 32 to 36 make much of the proximity and contribution to the airbase at Lakenheath, and the report suggests that it would also serve the bases at Feltwell and Mildenhall. The information I have is that there are no planned developments at either of these bases, and certainly not within the 3 years proposed. Undoubtedly, RAF Lakenheath is a major employer in the area, but to suggest that the application is anything other than a matter of convenience for the applicant is spurious. The landscape officer and paragraph 41 admit harm, but as it is moderate, it can be discounted. But it should only be discounted if there are genuinely overriding benefits. Paragraphs 47 and 49 suggest that the overriding benefit is to the local economy, but fails to explain how, and I regret that I cannot see how the local economy will benefit at all. Paragraphs 51 to 59 on ecology defy belief, given the approach to other applications. So far as highways are concerned, you have a choice of accepting Suffolk Highways no problem, or all the local councillors whose approach is based on sometimes painful experience. Paragraphs 60 and 61, whilst it is right and proper that each application must be considered on its merits, my feeling is that to ignore history and the probable future is at very best unwise. I am sorry to say that I cannot see why the committee should approve this application with a recommendation which appears to be stretching every discretion to make it fit. Thank you again.
Thank you very much indeed, Helen. We now turn our attention. David and Ryan, you're sharing your slot, aren't you? And you're starting first, David, aren't you? Yes, I am. Could you put your mic? Can you...
Ryan will interject. Yes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, I'll be quick because there's lots of issues that we need to address and correct facts. Firstly, there will be no increase in traffic of lorry movements through Brandon because Brandon primarily imports limestone aggregate, and we will not be batching concrete with limestone. We will be batching it with gravel aggregate and recycled stone. And ironically, the presence of the silo will not generate more work. It will not generate more concrete to be produced. All we are doing is taking a slice of that cake that is already there, and we are adjacent to Gate 8, so our carbon footprint is vastly reduced, contrary to what Mr. Lukanik said, and the cement that comes from Dagenham will come, and that is the closest railhead for bringing in cement into the area. And you will find that that applies to any ready-mix contractor that produces concrete. They buy bagged cement, and there's a subtle difference between cement and concrete. Cement is grey powder, which has to come by road and is produced by calcating lime. It's not produced locally, so whoever produces concrete in East Anglia will have to buy cement from Dagenham or another major importer of cement. So that's a total nonsense to start with. And as far as the destruction of the SPA where the plant sits on part of a dispersal area, which was part of the World War II base, where actually the whole of the recycling area was a dispersal area for B-52s. The plant is sited on PQ concrete, which is not an SPA, is not a special protected area. That's a total nonsense and is not true. The landscape place services who objected on landscape, they are a sub-consultant to West Suffolk. They viewed the application primarily as an aggregate mineral extraction, and they took some 9 months to actually come back to the table with their view. They viewed the application on a laptop, 2D laptop, Google Earth. We asked them to come to site to look at the application to see what was actually happening, because we have a silo that's 17 metres high. Behind it, we're constructing an acoustic bund for a rifle range, which is going to be in excess of 30 metres high when it's finished. So to say it's an intrusion in the landscape, that's an utter nonsense as well. And incidentally, with place services, I desperately tried to get them to come to site to view the application. And they don't have a car allowance, they don't have a pool car, they refuse to come to site. I even offered to go to their place of work to collect them, to bring them to site,
David,
to have a look.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you've 3 minutes. Can you finish up quickly? Have you anything?
In essence...
Just a sentence or two?
Yeah, we are not producing additional concrete. We're only taking a slice of that cake that is already there. If our trucks are not on the A1065, somebody else's will be. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right, members, committee discussion and debate. Councillor Chester.
There you go, you're right.
Thanks, Chair. I have concerns here and several questions. Could you explain the batching process? Are we actually crossing raw materials here? That's question one for the officer, please. Is there raw materials, existing concrete coming to site which is going to be crushed? The distance from the proposed plant, or the existing plant, because I believe it's already in situ, to residential, and the projected increase in lorry movements. We're talking about 400, maximum of 400 tonnes of processed material here. How many lorries will that increase in that area? And I'd also seek guidance on the buffer zone, as this is a protected area, what that buffer zone entails, and can that be corrupted, or should that be preserved for posterity? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Okay. Councillor Mildmay White, thank you.
Is our queuing system not working?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You're live.
Right. We do seem to have conflicting opinions here, don't we? It's interesting to hear the members from Brandon worrying about the SPA when they've spent years trying to fight Natural England on that to build 1,500 houses. So that's a dichotomy that is interesting to me. Also, we have different opinions from Suffolk County Council traffic survey. So I'm looking at the one that was done in February 2023, which Councillor Lucanik took part in or instigated. And the conclusions to that are that, as per the previous study in 2017, HG volume in the town remains low compared to overall vehicle movements using the existing road network in and around Brandon. So as per the study in 2017, most HG volumes travelling in and out of Brandon is along the A16A1065. And the conclusion is that Suffolk County Council, as regards this survey, they have no problem with the HGV movements. So I do feel that the questions that we had at the previous committee have been addressed, and I see no problem actually in recommending this, moving this application for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Mildmay White. Is that seconded, please? And would you like to speak at this point?
No, I just concur with Councillor on my left. We've heard this all before. We visited the site, had a look at the batching plant, which is actually there at the moment, understood the process, understood the fact that it's cement that is bought in, obviously has to be bought in from elsewhere. And we saw the concrete, the sort of old road materials, old runway materials being ground up into powder to be mixed with the cement. So, seems perfectly good operation to me. Yeah, okay, it's a high building, but as we heard from the applicant, there is a bund going up, a large one around the rifle range and the clay pigeon shooting range, which has been there for very many years. It's a noisy area, it's a busy road. I'm not knocking Brandon. Brandon is a massive bottleneck, which nobody's addressed for year after year after year after year. And it really does need help. It needs a bypass. But the thing is, the stone curlew will get in the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. Some of what I was going to say seems to have already been said, but I'll go through my notes here, which is from an economic point of view. Obviously, we don't want to stand in the way of progress, and we, want to make sure that economic activity can happen wherever it is possible to happen. Any arguments with regards to noise are spurious when you've got the F-22s flying around. I think that the wheel wash is an interesting one. Yes, there is a wheel wash on site, and yes, the applicant have said that that's their own their own policies that are making sure that the wheel wash is used. However, I notice there's nothing in this application that would make the wheel wash used. So if the applicant decided to change their own internal policies on that, we would not have recourse unless we wanted to add a condition saying that the existing wheel wash is used, which I don't think, considering its location, would be an onerous addition to the application. I do have a question with regards to lorry movements, and it is a question with regards to the fact that we have the concrete batching plant and we have the aggregates recycling centre. And we have been told that we are only dealing with the concrete batching plant and not the recycling centre. So we should be ignoring the existing activities in the recycling centre and only focusing on those things that are specific to the concrete batching plant. And yet, in paragraph 87, when we're talking about additional movements, in addition to the ones that are already there for the recycling centre, but we've been told that we should ignore what's happening with the recycling centre and only concentrate on the batching plant. Batching plant has going to have 80 traffic movements a week associated with it. The fact that that is an increase of 3 traffic movements seems to be in relation to the wider site, which we have been told we shouldn't be considering. So I just want to tease that out as a question, because it does seem as if we are applying a slightly different standard of thinking depending upon where in the application we're talking. And finally, if it would make things easier, I mean, I cannot understand why we could not say, just don't go through Brandon and match the other sites that Holbrook are using, such as the sidings. If the applicants aren't bringing things through from those sidings, then again, that shouldn't be a particularly onerous thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for the legal side of things. It's a brownfield site. It has been forever. The company is operating a crushing system. They now want to expand to batch that crushed material into concrete. So by using the crushed material, it decreases the amount of traffic movements because some of it's staying on site to be turned into concrete. But then you have a plus of 3 vehicles bringing in more concrete. I just want to know, if we turn this down, where do we stand legally? That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor Bull, please.
I actually have nothing new. I think most things have been said. But I would just say, I think actually trying to put a restriction on the lorries driving through Brandon, that I don't think is practical, because although they could possibly restrict their own lorries, if they've got lorries that aren't theirs, you can't put that on, as I understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bull. I've got Councillor Higgins, and then I'm going to go to officers to respond to some of the points and questions. Councillor Higgins, please.
Am I live? I am. First of all, I have been to Brandon and I have seen what the current load of lorries are doing to the streets in that town. I am mindful that not one, but 2 town and 1 parish councillors have actually spoken quite vehemently in their objections, and I feel that they actually understand their locality better than I do. On the other hand, I have heard some, quite persuasive arguments from the people who are asking for permission to do this. So with that in mind, and bearing in mind that I'm a substitute, so I haven't actually had a chance to go and see the site for myself, I will be abstaining on this point. But I really do think we should take into serious consideration the local people and their feelings.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Right, over to officers.
Thank you, Chair.
Start with Councillor Chester, who I think some of other members' comments might have answered your first question, which was about crushing raw materials. So this application is just for the batching plant. There is the recycling centre next door, and that's where materials will be recycled. So they'll come in, be crushed, and then used in the batching process. Joanne's going to just go over the question that a couple of members have raised about traffic movements, but I'll continue with a couple of other answers first. Councillor Chester, you also raised the query about impact on the special protection area and Stone Curlew. It is set out in detail in the report. The biggest difference between concerns that we hear regularly about the impact of housing on the special protection area and something like this commercial development is really the difference in terms of human impact, recreational impact, and also predatory impact from pets in relation to residential development that you wouldn't obviously get with a concrete batching plant, and that explains the difference there. I think, Councillor London, you asked the question about wheel washing, the fact that they've got it on site at the moment, but we haven't got a recommendation to add a wheel washing condition if members resolve to approve this application. The difficulty with that comes in how we would be able to enforce it and disaggregate it, that's a pun, disaggregate it from the recycling facility, which doesn't have such a condition. So there is a difficulty in relation to one of the requirements in planning law is that conditions that we put on should be enforceable. So that is a concern there. A couple of people have also asked a question about why don't we just put a condition on to say you can't access, anything from this development can't be accessed through Brandon. We simply don't have any evidence to support a routing condition through Brandon, particularly given the traffic numbers that we're talking about. And then finally, before I hand over to Joanne, Councillor Waldron asked a question about where do we stand legally if this application was to be refused. That really depends on what grounds members were looking to refuse it on. We certainly, as we've gone through the discussion here in both meetings, we don't have evidence that relates to being able to support a refusal reason that would withstand an appeal in terms of highways impact. So it would depend on whether we got that far in terms of a counter proposal potentially. That's it from me. I'll hand over to Joanne to give you to recap on the traffic numbers again.
Okay. So my understanding from detailed discussions with the applicant is that there's going to be an additional traffic movements of 3 vehicles a week coming in to bring the cement mix. Now that is booked from Dagenham, which is obviously south. So that if it, we're not going to condition that, but from the information we've got, it wouldn't, these 3 traffic movements, the additional movements coming from Dagenham base, and they wouldn't therefore be going through Brandon itself. The additional traffic movements are the movements associated specifically with the batching plants, with the batching plant and with the concrete. So that is the concrete mixers coming to site, picking up the concrete and then going. Now, the reason that won't increase any traffic movements from the site is because the aggregate itself, as we've heard, is actually produced on site. So for it to be used in concrete, that would then be taken, the aggregate, to a different concrete batching plant. So it would be taken off site anyway, creating a vehicle movement. So in essence, what you have is you have either a vehicle movement taking off the aggregate to a different batching plant, or you have a vehicle taking the concrete because it's already been batched. So that's why there wouldn't necessarily be an increase in traffic movements from the site. From the information that we've got, obviously concrete needs to be batched somewhere because development will be undertaken at either LBF Lakenheath or by agricultural users, and they will need concrete. So in effect, it could in a way be lowering the traffic on the roads, because rather than having the aggregate taken off and then taken outside, sometimes up to Norfolk, to produce this concrete in batching plants and then brought in. You see, so you've got all these different batching plants from further afield, which would bring the concrete back into the area for any development that's required. So hopefully that's explained it. Okay.
Well, I'll ask members. Is there any follow-up questions for the officer? Councillor Neil, press your, yeah. You've not. Press it again, because you've not come up on my screen. Yes, you go. There you go. Councillor Neil.
I'm on your screen.
Oh, no, you're off again. Oh, no, you're on again. That's fine. Yes.
Typical me. I don't know if I'm coming or going. That's typical.
Thanks, Councillor Neil.
Right, I've taken a few notes and listened to all the objections and people who are in favour of it. And there's still an awful lot that's unknown and that hasn't been considered. I'm not seeing a strong traffic management plan. And I'm not seeing HGV, an official HGV vehicle count. There seems to be a contradiction in the numbers there. The entrance to this site is opposite a school and a housing estate, just across the fence on the base. And obviously there's a noise and there's a filth. I don't like to use that word, but it's the only word I can think of. Of debris from the site that's on a windy day is going onto that housing estate and that school. If we look at the traffic movements on that area and the bases that have been mentioned, the cement lorries, they're going to be passing through the villages, and the impact on the villages is a grave concern. I couldn't support it because I wouldn't want anything on my conscience if there was a problem in any of these villages. It's been explained about the difference between residential and commercial regarding the stone curlews, but do the birds know the difference? That's what I've highlighted there. The vehicles currently are not adhering to a vehicle movement restriction that was imposed by Norfolk Council. I only went into Brandon one day last week and I passed 3 of the lorries that had obviously come through the high street, having had a restriction put upon them. So I don't know if we was to put any restriction on traffic movement, how or whether this company would actually adhere to that anyway, because they currently don't at the moment. And I don't think that's ethically right. A vehicle wash is there for the vehicles going in, but it isn't for the vehicles coming out. Am I wrong in saying that? Because I thought that's what I heard. If I've got that wrong, fair enough. That's my age and my hearing. I would like to think there's a vehicle wash for vehicles coming out of the site. It's supplied the bases for a number of years. You know, I've worked on the base and I've sat behind their lorries. I know of quite a few of their drivers. Nice guys, their drivers are, although they do have a little moan. But this batching plant, I don't see the benefit of it in terms of supplying to the bases because they've been doing that for years anyway. The business on the base doesn't hinge on whether this batching plant is approved today or it isn't. That's all I've got to say, but I will not be supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to tease out something that came from the officer's reply just now, which is that even though there is a wheel washing facility on site, even though the applicant has got internal processes saying that they will use that, it's still beyond our enforcement officers to have a condition to wheel wash the lorries, even though it's on site and it's being used. Our enforcement is so toothless that we can't even enforce something that's already on site and already being used. I really want to be able to say yes to this. I want to be able to have economic activity and growth in our area, but I'm saddened at the fact that we can't put in what seem to be quite minor adjustments just to help the local residents in the area with regards to this extra activity. And it is, I fear, a result of these processes that we have in place that means that residents don't want extra economic activity in their area. If we were able to robustly mitigate the effect of developments such as these, then people would welcome the extra jobs in the area. People would welcome the extra activity. That's not the situation that we're in currently. And I still have not yet made my decision up with regards to this, but I'm disappointed that we can't put that structure in place to make sure that this is beneficial to the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a general appeal, really, not to be disparaging of officers within West Suffolk Council, because it could be that they are bound by case law and bound by their legal responsibilities. So the toothless comment, I would like to think, was
absolutely no insult to officers is meant.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this application is suffering from the unhappiness with existing HGV traffic and the fear of what additionally it's going to cause. There doesn't seem to me to be an additional huge increase in traffic at all. And we have to put aside the problem they have already. That's a wider problem. And I think for the wheel wash, again, how do you we can't condition this because most of the lorries going onto the site are not going to be involved with which are which lorries. You can't condition the ones taking the aggregate in because they're not going to the batching. So I don't see how you can do this, but I do think this application needs to be looked at. We can't use it to solve the existing traffic problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. Right, officers, could you respond, please?
No, thank you, Chair. I think there's just a couple of points that I wanted to respond to, and Councillor Bull's just touched on it, really. When we're determining this application, we have to deal with the merits of this application, not any wider concerns in the locality about HGV movements, Stone Curlew, any of those issues if they don't relate specifically to this application. So I'd urge members to be careful about that. Also, the local business and what members might think of this applicant and any other operations they have, we need to stick to the merits and considerations for this application. One last point of clarification, for Councillor Neil, the wheel washing would be on exit. Don't know whether they want to wash wheels as they come in. I doubt it very much. It would be on exit that the wheel washing facility is used. And that was all I needed to say, really. Thank you.
Anything from Joanne? No? Okay. Councillor Neil, please.
I'm there. Yeah, what I'm finding hard to get my head around is the fact that we're not taking into consideration all aspects of this operation, of this mixing for concrete. The aggregate side is also part of the traffic management of this area. It's they're using those materials. The vehicles are bringing that aggregate onto the site to be crushed, to be used in the concrete. It's a bit like an ingredient for a cake, really, when we're talking about one aspect of making the cake. So whether I've got the whole thing wrong, I don't know, because I'm looking at your faces and it looks like you don't understand what I'm on about. But the traffic movement on that site, bringing aggregate to the site to be stored, to be used, surely we need to take the whole operation rather than just the mixing.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Did my face change? I was listening intently to you, Councillor Neil. But Rachel would like to respond to your further questioning.
So I think there's been a few comments raised, one about the operations of the sidings at the station in Brandon, and then the recycling facility, which is on the same site as this proposal for a concrete batching plant. If we didn't have an application for a concrete batching plant, we would still have sidings at Brandon that can operate within the constraints of that permission. And we would also still have an aggregate recycling centre just off the A1065 on this site, which has a lawful development certificate to operate. So the impacts of either of those cannot be taken into account when we're dealing with the concrete batching plant. Those things exist already, and whether there's a concrete batching plant there or not, they would still exist unless the applicant decides to change them. So we have to concentrate on the impacts of the proposal itself, even though part of the impacts are reduced by the fact that they've got a recycling facility next door where they will use those aggregates. But that lawful use could still happen whether we had a proposal for a concrete batching plant or not.
Thank you, Rachel. That stimulated three members. I've got Councillor Sayer first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still very undecided about this. I do want to take into account the local ward members and the people that live there, and do understand their concerns about the traffic movements. But I do take into account also the officers saying that we cannot go on what is already a problem to influence our decision on this. I'm also rather conflicted about the evidence of the traffic movements, which do not seem to agree, Suffolk County Council and Norfolk County Council, about actually what is going on. And it's a pity that we do not have a definitive survey that says actually what is going on, because I note that it does say that this concrete batching plant is for a temporary period of 3 years. And if we knew what the traffic movements were now, we would then know at the end of 3 years, when this could probably come back to us again, whether it was possible for it to carry on or not. So I do think the fact that the traffic movements is conflicting is not helping us make a decision.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to clarify before I make my main comment for the benefit of officers. My frustration is with the legal framework that we find ourselves within, not with the actions of officers here. And I apologise if that was the way that my comments were construed. So I'm very sorry about that. It's just the NPPF and the wider sort of environment is what I have issues with. I would like to just pick up again, and we are talking about the traffic movements an awful lot, and the fact that this is two separate things. We've got, as Councillor Neil has pointed out, we've got the recycling. Are we back on? We are back on. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm struggling to just fully understand the wall that we have to have in our mind between the two different sides of this very interconnected set of processes on the site. So, to my understanding, we are supposed to ignore anything to do with the concrete, with anything that is not to do with the concrete side, that is to do with the aggregate recycling side. That's not part of this application. So I don't see how any reduction in the number of lorries for the aggregate side of things can be associated with this, even though that is because they're being used by this as well. We have 80 traffic movements a week associated with this batching plant, no overall change in the number, and therefore mathematically a reduction in the number that's going to the other side that we're not supposed to think about. So we have a reduction in the side that we are not supposed to think about, but we do have an increase in the side that we are supposed to be thinking about. So surely we need to take that increase into mind and disambiguate and not worry about the reduction on the other side, which is not part of this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor London. I've got Councillor Higgins and Councillor Lynch, but did you want to come back on this point again? Thank you, Rachel.
It might be worth it while I've still got it in my head. So I take the point you're making. My understanding of how the Highways Authority have assessed this, we're not putting a condition on to say you can only use aggregate from the site next door. My understanding is, therefore, that even if it was 80 movements and 3 cement lorries, there isn't an objection to the use of for the concrete batching plant in terms of impact on the highway. So if it was vital that those 80 movements had to come from the recycling plant next door, we'd be putting a condition on to say that has to come from there. It so happens that the applicant has explained that that's where it will come from and it's acceptable. If there was a concern that the difference in 80 movements was the difference between a no objection from the Highways Authority and a refusal from the Highways Authority, we would have a condition to say the only place aggregates can come from is next door. Can I just make one more comment? It was one that Councillor Sayer made in terms of concern that the traffic figures don't add up, and we've got no definitive survey, but then there has been mention of the traffic surveys that have been carried out through Brandon. Those are entirely separate. The traffic survey that was carried out in Brandon by the county council was to identify the number of HGV movements through Brandon as a whole, not anything to do with this application. It was done a couple of years ago, and it was about what the ANPR cameras said in terms of traffic movements through Brandon within a certain timescale. So useful background information. It did conclude that on that basis, the county council didn't think there was a major HGV problem in Brandon, but those figures speak for themselves and they're not part of this application.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Higgins, please. Yeah.
People can hear me. Can I just clarify, please? Because I heard mention that this company is actually the same company that has the works at the sidings. Is that correct? First of all, it is. Right, so I know that there's a lot of concern about the wheel washing. And I think that is because there doesn't appear to be wheel washing from their current business, because what I've seen in Brandon is a lot of muck that comes down the street from the wheels of those lorries. Now, I know we're not supposed to take that into consideration, but the fact that this company is saying that wheel washing is there makes me wonder why they're not using it currently. Is it because they're only mentioning it for this particular site, and there's a different reason for this site? Or, you know, what is the case? Because their current practice doesn't appear to be to wheel wash.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. I've got 3 more members. Can I just go to those members first and then come back on the wider point? Councillor Lynch, please.
Is it on? Yeah. Joanne, earlier you described a reason why it might potentially reduce overall HGV levels overall. I don't think other members really understood the point because, they haven't. I don't think other people have understood it. So maybe you could repeat it again. That would be appreciated. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Okay now. I'm a bit concerned because we spent a long time now discussing traffic movements, and we did at the last meeting over this application. If we're going to have these discussions, then we need to have Suffolk County Council Highways here, because we are not the experts. We have to take their advice. And we're spending hours and hours discussing something that we cannot take decisions on. And also Norfolk County Council were quoted as because of the Brandon site and what they said about there. So therefore, this is concerning me. And I raise this every time because it's taking so much time that we can't really answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. On page 17, the site details, again, we have to the east of the site is Brandon Road, 1065 and beyond RAF Lakenheath. Now, I'm having troubles with my compass again. But my compass says it's to the west, not the east. The other query I've got is in condition 4, we talk about the noise and it will not exceed by 1 dB, etc., etc. But we refer to the background noise level. Now, they don't appear to have a qualification as to what the background noise level on this site is. Is it with a normal recycling plant running? Or what? Because to my mind, background noise is what you've got when you've got basically everything turned off. And in that situation, the noise of the batching plant is going to be very audible. If it's there with the recycling plant, we're told it isn't. So can we have a bit of clarity on what background noise actually is in this case, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on Councillor Thorndyke's point, they talk about noise. If you take a walk in the shooting season at the Warren in Mildenhall, you can hear the shooting clear as day to the extent that it frightens the dogs, but you can't hear the batching plant. The other thing, Brandon, the siding's 10 metres into Norfolk. They have made a decision that this is where the traffic goes. But ultimately, it's like a covenant on a house, right? Unless they enforce it, there's nothing you can do about it. The person who makes the covenant or the decision has to enforce it. And they're not going to enforce it if the traffic's going down Brandon High Street. Oh, it's gone 10 metres the wrong way. Nothing to do with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Point well made again, Councillor. Right. Councillor Lynch would like you to repeat your explanation on traffic to and from the site. Are you able to do that?
Yes, I'll try.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so my understanding is that the additional traffic to serve the site as a whole, the recycling centre and the batching plant, would be 3 lorries. So these 3 lorries would bring on the cement mix needed to make the concrete. The aggregates needed to make the concrete, they're already there. They're on site, and as I've said, this is well established. The recycling centre's been there since 2004. They have, and they operate, their tonnage is restricted by an EA permit. Now, the traffic movements from the site would not be increasing over that 3 movements for the cement, because in effect what you will have is lorries leaving the site with the concrete batched and ready to go for development, rather than lorries transporting the aggregate to a different site to be put through that batching plant. And then obviously, if you are then coming back to development at RAF Lakenheath or in the locality, you will have an increase because you'll have the aggregates coming out, being driven to a batching plant, and you'll remember I put a map on the screen showing they can go to Ely, Kings Lynn, they go south, all over. They will then be batched on site to make the concrete, to then come back to RAF Lakenheath, to agricultural users in the locality to use the concrete then. So that is why I was trying to say that overall, and that's why I put that map on, that you would potentially see a decrease in the amount of movements, because obviously you wouldn't have this taking the aggregates to a different batching plant to then have the concrete brought back into the region. But overall, as I said, you wouldn't necessarily have an increase directly from the recycling plant, because the lorries would simply be taking out concrete rather than taking out aggregate to be made into concrete somewhere else. Does that, hopefully, that makes sense? And obviously the applicant explained to me the level of concrete needed for development is going to be there anyway. Development will be happening at RAF Lakenheath, will be happening on farms, and they will get the concrete sourced from somewhere. So it will either be from here or it will be from further afield. So that won't be increased just because the concrete's there.
Thank you, Joanne. And did you, Rachel, do you want to just pick up these final points here? Because I'm going to move the proposal shortly.
Yeah, so condition 4 that relates to, just read the start of the condition actually. The rating level of noise emitted from batching operations shall not exceed the existing background noise level in order to prevent any adverse effect. So my understanding is that that would include whatever the background noise level is at the time. So it could be the recycling plant, it could be the shooting range, it could be aircraft taking off from RAF Lakenheath. It's the background noise level. It would have to be taken, any assessment would have to be taken in relation to the British standard. I don't know that British standard from any other in terms of noise, but there's a British standard that establishes how you measure noise emitted from this development in relation to the background noise level, and that condition was recommended by our Public Health and Housing Officer.
Thank you, Rachel. Right. So we've had a final response from officers, and notwithstanding your point, Councillor Glossop, which you make very eloquently almost every time we have a problem with a highways matter. So I understand that. There's no other members wishing to speak at the moment, so I'm going to put the proposal to the committee, which is Councillor Mildmay White proposed approval, and that was seconded by Councillor Holder. Could I see a show of hands in favour of that proposal, please? Those against, please? And clarification on the abstention, I think, just for... Okay, should I go through that again? Would it be helpful? Those in favour of the proposal to approve in accordance with the recommendation from the officer? Those against, please? And the abstentions, please?
Thank you. So that's 8 votes in favour, 1 vote against, 4 abstentions. So the motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Which way did he go?
Yes. Hang on. We're just going to have a couple of minutes break, okay? Because so you've got Okay. Just a gentle reminder that once you've pressed your microphone, because Councillor Neil was like on my screen, off my screen. Once you just press it once and then wait to be called. And don't press it when I call you. It's the most obedient towards me you've ever been, Councillor Glossop. So, right, so we're now moving on to land at Richmond Road at Brandon, and we've actually got Tamara, the presenting case officer. So Tamara, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see some of you again from our site visit on Monday. This is a full planning application along Richmond Road in Brandon. The application is proposing a new lorry wash area alongside parking for cars and lorries and a driver facilities building in the form of a detached office block. Alongside the proposed elements of the application also seeks for the retention of installed hard standing, metal fencing and access gate, which are already at the site. The application was considered at delegation panel on the 2nd of July last month due to the Town Council objection being contrary to the officer recommendation of approval. So that is why we are here today. So on the screen now, we can see the submitted location plan and GIS plan illustrating the site. As you can see, the site is illustrated by the red line on the left and is positioned approximately halfway down Richmond Road within the industrial estate. The site itself is within the Brandon settlement boundary with access gained from Highbury Road to the north-east, which branches off London Road to the north-west, which you can just see Highbury Road here and then the main London Road here. The site is not located within a conservation area or in close proximity to any listed buildings or protected trees. There is approximately 30 metres north of the application site a SSSI, which is just here, which I've illustrated with my pointer. And the site is also located within the Woodlark and Nightjar 400 metre buffer zone 2. Just to highlight at this stage, the SSSI is a small meadow, which is designated due to a population of a Schedule 8 plant. So on the screen now, we can see the proposed site plan for the proposal. As you can see, the lorry wash will be sited within the northern corner of the plot with the driver office adjacent and to the rear. The site plan also denotes the proposed lorry and car parking bays on the left-hand side, turning path, proposed drainage infrastructure such as soakways and a separator, and lighting. As noted on the previous slide, the site is located within the Brandon industrial estate and is therefore surrounded by many other warehouses and businesses within the locality. The lorry wash is proposed to be used by the applicant, BYF Transport, and their subcontractors. In total, during peak period, they own a total of 30 vehicles, including their subcontractors, and it is proposed the lorry wash will be used by 15 to 25 lorries per week. So this slide shows the visibility displays which have been submitted alongside the application. The proposal will utilise an existing access from Richmond Road, and the site sits to the east of another well-known business, Chase Plastics, which is just here, and their storage area. So again, this plan just illustrates the proposed office block that I've mentioned, which is to be sited to the rear and adjacent to the lorry wash area. As you can see from the floor plan, the block itself will be modest and single storey, providing a kitchenette, workspaces, meeting room and storage space. The building itself, as I've said, is modest, 10 metres in width, 7 metres deep, and be a max height of 2.7 metres with a flat roof. So moving on to some photos, and members who came on the site visit on Monday will recognise some of the views on the screen. So this photo is looking at the entrance of the site with the existing access and metal gate and fencing. As noted on the site plan, the proposed lorry wash would sit within the rear corner, just over there. So again, this picture is just looking down Richmond Road from Highbury Avenue and towards the access gate. As you can see, the context of the site is within the industrial estate, and you can just see Chase Plastics building just to the back here in that blue clad. And again, this photo just shows the northeastern boundary of the site, which should hopefully help to translate the depth of the site and where the lorry wash will sit just in the rear corner. And apologies, the two pictures are a little dark, but I will do my best to explain. This is a photo submitted with the application and faces out towards Richmond Road and the existing access. So we're inside the site here. You can see some of the units to the south of the site with Richmond Road in the background, just where that van is there. And again, this photo is looking towards the western boundary from within the site. As you can see, there's a large close boarded fence on the boundary which separates the site with Chase Plastics. In this rear corner would be an area for car parking and also where the small office and facilities building would sit approximately there. So moving on to consultation comments and representations. Just to note, I have summarised on the screen for you today the comments that have been received. However, you can read the full comments from consultees on paragraph 10 onwards within the report. In addition, just to highlight, we have now received a formal objection from Councillor Lucanik since the report was published. Therefore, the second bullet point on the screen is the most up-to-date response. Looking at the responses, members will note we have received two main objections for the proposal from Brandon Town Council and the local ward member. Concerns within the objection include the potential pollution from the lorry wash, intensification within Richmond Road and additional HGV movements. Apart from these two objections, no further concerns have been raised by consultees and no public or third-party representations have been received. So just to expand on some of the concerns raised by the Town Council and the ward member further, I've summarised officer thoughts between the two main bullet points on the screen now. In terms of potential pollutant concerns, we would highlight that the proposed site plan illustrates the addition of soakways and a silt separator, which would be installed at the site. Alongside these two elements, it has also been agreed that a pre-commencement condition would be applied to the permission, if granted, for a complete and thorough drainage strategy to be submitted and assessed by the department prior to development taking place. This would then be assessed by the relevant officer to ensure that drainage is sufficiently controlled within the site. In addition, in terms of the concern for the highway, Richmond Road and additional HGVs, Suffolk County Council have been consulted on the application and confirmed they hold no objections to the scheme, nor do they consider rerouting for HGVs necessary. The site is located within the Brandon Industrial Estate, and members who attended the site visit alongside the photos within this presentation can acknowledge that larger vehicles and lorries are frequently moving within the estate at present to surrounding units and businesses within the locality. It is considered by officers that the site itself provides adequate space for both lorries and cars to manoeuvre off Richmond Road to alleviate impact on the highway network. As highlighted within the presentation already, there is no evidence within the application to suggest HGV movements throughout the site would be significantly increased as a result of the proposal, with between 15 and 25 lorries proposed to be washed per week. To mitigate potential concerns related to vehicular activity, a condition would be applied to restrict the use of the lorry wash to be tied to the business on the site only, which in this case would be BYF Transport. So to conclude, the site itself is located within the Brandon settlement boundary and industrial estate and would utilise an existing unused piece of land. Policy CS6 of the Forest Heath Strategy states that support will be given to developing and sustaining the existing economy, which further identifies the industrial estate as one of the economic bases of the district, and support will be given for businesses to become established and grow. As noted by the site visit and photos, the only built form within the site would be the small facilities building and the installed elements such as the fencing, gate and hard standing. Officers do not consider the proposed use at the site is uncharacteristic of the industrial estate, and therefore the proposal accords with policy DM2. As explained within the previous slide, the proposal is not to be used commercially, and it is considered the site is large enough to provide adequate movement for both lorries and cars to alleviate impact on the highway for Richmond Road and the wider estate. The estate itself is frequently used by lorries in association with other businesses throughout the estate, and the proposal is not considered to adversely increase these movements. Furthermore, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, which are paragraph 46 onwards in your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamara. Public speakers, we have two registered speakers. Again, we have Councillor Victor Lucanik, but in his capacity this time as a ward member. And then we've got Matt Sayer, the architect for the applicant. So, Victor, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will guarantee this time that I'll be within the 3 minutes, and I probably won't need prompting. Mr. Chairman, yet another HEV scheme for Brandon that will add to our misery. Page 47, paragraph 26 of the report clearly states that this scheme, if succeeds, will cater strictly for the applicant's trucks and not intended for commercial use. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. I have an image here of a bulk carrier being washed out at Richmond Road on the site in question, owned by NFP Limited, and they drive from Beeston in Norfolk through our already congested High Street onto Richmond Road. The lorry wash facility will be washing out bulk containers, nothing to do with wheels or chassis, bulk containers. They jacked up at the front to let the water come out the back tailgate. We have seen them and heard them. They are the ones that rattle like hell when empty. Some days they carry contaminated wood chip, and then they switch to foodstuffs, sugar beet, potatoes, carrots, whatever. That's why they need washing out at regular intervals. The cleaning operation requires enormous amounts of water, which will simply be allowed to drain into the natural geology with all the pollutants only yards away from a triple SI. When are we going to respect our environment? West Suffolk Council no longer resort. We, as a council, we no longer resort to landfill, and the same criteria must be applied to all lorry wash facilities. This is a polluting facility ready to go into action, unless, of course, we act on it. Accessibility, ladies and gentlemen. Richmond Road is a small, restrictive spur off Highbury Road, hardly the place for articulated units. And I must mention that prior to Brandon Town Council objecting to the company in question, they requested for an operator's licence from the Traffic Commissioner for 20 trucks and 25 trailers. Parking would have been an issue, unless, of course, they were going to stack them up one on top of the other. The application was withdrawn, Mr. Chairman. Finally, within the 3 minutes, Mr. Chairman, two businesses in close proximity to Richmond Road have raised serious concern with the application, but I'm not prepared to divulge them in an open public meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Victor. And it was well within the 3 minutes, so thank you. Matt, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Good morning. The applicant is local to Brandon and has a fleet of 15 vehicles approximately, which he presently washes in Bury St Edmunds. So the thinking behind the land purchase in this application is a desire to bring things closer to home and reduce unnecessary back and forth across the county. So a net gain in terms of fuel use and emissions, and also a net reduction in the traffic through Brandon Centre from the current storage site through Brandon to Bury. As well as these benefits, it's founded in a desire to support the local area. So it might not be, and is certainly not, a massive operation, but there will be a material benefit in increasing employment locally and the virtuous circle that comes from supporting small local businesses. I know you're not guided by emotion, but bound by policy, and Tamara has clearly outlined the policy that supports the application, but I want to just address the two main concerns coming from the ward rep and the town council regarding traffic and ecology. Regarding traffic and access, I visited the site again this morning just to check that we hadn't missed something, and we measured both Highbury and Richmond Road. For context, the town council's concerns are, quote, the volume of traffic on such a small road. Both roads on the industrial estate, Highbury and Richmond, are 7,330 millimetres wide, so incredibly wide. It cannot reasonably be called a small road. And if traffic moving through the town is the concern, most of the lorries will be returning to Brandon from the Midlands and wider UK, so will be coming from the A14, then A11, A1065, so will not be proximate to the town centre itself. They presently travel from Brandon through the town to Bury to be washed and then back through Brandon again to the industrial estate. So the application would categorically reduce traffic flow through the town. And if that's the main concern, hopefully that can be negated. But even on that point, the site is classified in the site allocation SA16E as an industrial employment area, in which new development of exactly the type in this application will be supported. And it's also worth noting that the applicant predicts the average number of visits to be 10 to 15 each week and an absolute peak of 30 per week at high season. And these will always be by appointment, so they will not be open to customers to turn up unannounced. Suffolk County Council Highways have no objection, and in the context of the industrial estate, it cannot reasonably be objected to on grounds of access or highways. On the next point of water runoff, this is covered in the third party by a third party ecologist who estimates water runoff to be 0.8 cubic meters for 10 vehicles to be washed, 0.8.
Matt, I'm very sorry, you've run over time. Can you finish up in one sentence?
I can. The threshold for consideration regarding the triple SI is 5 cubic meters per day. So if every lorry was washed every single day, we would still not meet that threshold.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much indeed. Right, committee. Who wishes to open the discussion? We've got Councillor Neil. I do apologise, it's very informal of me. Councillor Neil, please.
You can be informal with me, no problem. I just wondered what the interceptor capacity would be, because obviously that's quite crucial to this operation. And if, as has been highlighted, there's wood chips and debris from in the trailer of a bulk container, I just wondered if the interceptor capacity is going to be enough to cater for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'm minded to approve this, except that I've just heard the gentleman has just said he referred to the lorries coming in as customers. Now, I thought this was purely for the use of their own vehicles, BY, whoever they are. But he referred to them as customers, and I thought this was not supposed to be a commercial operation. Thank you.
Not just yet, Matt. I'll bring you in a moment if I feel it's appropriate. Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd be interested on that customer bit. Looking at Brandon Town Council's objections, I do think that we have had those addressed, and I'm quite satisfied with that. The site visit, we saw some very large lorries on that estate manoeuvring pretty well, actually, considering all our cars were blocking the roads, as it were. I am minded to support this. Thank you.
Is that going to turn into a proposal, Councillor Bull, or are you just waiting
I'm happy to propose. Yes, I'm happy to propose it.
Is that seconded anywhere, please? Councillor Malmay-White, would you like to speak at this point, Councillor?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back onto my list then. Councillor Whittam, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. To be perfectly honest, with most haulage companies, I never trust them over their figures of vehicle movements. And the good gentleman let slip customers. So where we have it in the papers that it is limited to their own use for their own vehicles, and now we have slip customers. How many, where from, and why? I'm also not happy with the said point, what it was of a cubic metre to wash each vehicle. I've worked in the heavy goods industry. I was a heavy goods driver, and just to wash out a big container would take an awful lot more of that than that. They also use highly toxic and caustic cleaning agents, which I don't think should be soaking into the ground. especially so close to a triple SI. And I would counter move to reject this one. Thank you.
Okay, we can't accept
You
that.
can't, no, I know.
Unless the other one fails. Okay, so, right, Matt, at this point, this is not another 3 minutes. Can you just concentrate on the customer's comments, please?
Absolutely categorical. There will be no customers. It will only be the owner's vehicles arriving by appointment. No customers at all.
I think the confusion was that you did mention customers, but
I said
guess-
in the context of there will not be customers arriving without an appointment. That will not happen. Customers will not be arriving full stop. It will only be the owner's vehicles.
Thank you for clarifying that.
We're happy to have conditions to that extent if that is a reasonable condition and that would make the members feel more comfortable supporting the application.
Just give the officers a moment to confirm. Yeah, Victor wants to come back. Even I've had finger trouble now. Victor, what did you...
Please, Chairman, just one simple question. I mean, perhaps I could...
No, you can't use visual aids, I'm afraid, Victor.
Chair,
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt your flow earlier because you were well in time.
Chair, just to clarify, if members look at page 53 of the report, condition 12 does restrict the use of the facility.
Okay, we continue the discussion then. Councillor London, I
very
saw
much,
you as
Chair.
well as you come up on my screen. Yeah.
Just a quick question with regards to the chemicals. Top of page 49, paragraph 36, acknowledged by officers that the lorry wash facility will be using cleaning chemicals. And further down, it talks about and I may be mispronouncing this, a Clargister washdown and silt separator. And I'd just like to understand if that is going to be removing chemicals from the water or if those chemicals will remain in the water after they leave the silt separator. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Neil, please.
I forgot what my question was. I'll come back to you.
You're not alone. Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We'll just see whether we can get any clarification on the separator.
Do you want me to answer
Yes,
the question?
Yeah, yes.
So if we go back to Councillor Neil's original question about interceptor capacity, I don't know, we don't know what the interceptor capacity will be, but, and this relates to Councillor London's question as well about removal of chemicals, condition 8 requires details of drainage to be submitted. My understanding is that the details of drainage with the interceptor is to intercept not just solids, but pollutants. So that's covered by condition 8. I think, yeah, it was the same one answer for both questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Anything from tomorrow? No? Okay, that's fine. Councillor Neil, you've obviously remembered your question.
I have. If they use an outside contractor, is that classed as being part of their operation? So if they used an outside contractor who's, I don't know, whatever their name is, they themselves might have a fleet of 20 vehicles. So when you're talking about what the capacity is, they're also come into that equation, do they not?
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I've seconded this because I'm happy to support this application. It's on an industrial estate. There's no reason to refuse this, in my opinion. But just to go back to that, the condition about the drainage and the water, will it just be our officers looking at that. Are we qualified enough to know about the chemicals and everything else that will be assessed? So condition 8, when we're talking about the approved scheme, but the discharge of surface water and also the separator, because on page 49.36 it says the applicant will need to provide a clear drainage strategy for water dispersal on site, and that will then be assessed by our environment team and local flood and water officer. But that doesn't necessarily take into account the separator. And are we really going to be in charge of understanding that, or do we need more outside information from the Environment Agency or somewhere as to what the chemicals are going to be? Otherwise, as I say, I'm happy to have supported this.
Thank you, Councillor Mulway. Rachel, you're going to respond? Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Neil's question about subcontractors. The application details that we have is for up to 30 vehicles a week of the applicant's business and subcontractors. And then Councillor Mardmay White's question about drainage, we would consult experts. So we've got our own environment team who'd be specifically looking at the pollution side of any drainage scheme, and then we have the lead local flood authority as well, who we'd consult on a condition.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. The filtration system that they propose to install, would it be like they have in automatic car washes, where the water's recycled a number of times, or would it just be disposed of? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor Higgins, please. Don't touch your microphone after you've been called, Councillor. Press it again.
Hello? Oh, good. I'm a little bit confused. We don't have a report on the chemicals that are being used. So that is not part of a planning consideration, whether they are toxic or not, whether there is suitable disposal of those chemicals, the actual operation of what happens with that washing. So is it a case of that's not part of a planning consideration, or that's something that we pass the planning and then later they could be shut down because they're not using the right stuff? I don't understand. Can you help, please?
We can. I've just got Councillor London first, and then officers will come back. Councillor London.
Thank you very much, Chair. Possibly, again, veering outside of our remit, but with regards to the 30 vehicles a week, obviously that's not conditioned here. I'm just wondering whether there is going to be a licensing regime for this that will look after such things as chemicals and number of vehicles per week.
Thank you, Councillor London. Okay. My screen is blank with members' requests, so over to officers again.
Thank you, Chair. We don't know the details of the washing system as to whether it will use recycled water or not. In terms of questions about the chemicals to be used, in planning terms, we do have policies that relate to ensuring we're preventing pollution of the environment. So it is important that that's considered, and that's why we have the condition to agree the drainage details. So it's certainly material to consider whether a proposal would pollute the environment or not, hence the condition that would control what goes through a drainage system and into the environment. And as far as I'm aware, there isn't a separate licensing regime for a lorry wash. I'm not an expert on the Environment Agency licensing, whether there'd be any environmental permit required. But from a planning point of view, we would look at preventing pollution through the drainage condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Neil, please.
I just wondered if part of this vehicle wash would actually be like pre-MOT work as well. So it wouldn't just be washing out trailers, then it could be like underbody washing, in which case there's going to be more sort of grease and oil and things like that involved that's going to go into the interceptors. So I just wondered if there was any clarification whether vehicle washing covered MOT work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Higgins, you want to come back? That's all right. Press it once more and wait. Thank you. You're on.
I'm sorry. I just really want to be clear about this. So the planning application is just for the principle of having a washing facility, and then afterwards there is a separate regulatory body that would look at what is being used to wash them with and how those things are being disposed of, either through the filtration and reuse of the water and then the removal of those pollutants should there be some. And that would be a separate body that looks at that and reports to who, please?
Okay, that's will be addressed. Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that for me there are just too many questions over the pollutants and the toxic chemicals that are going to be used to wash these vehicles, the type of material that they will have been carrying, which is also going to soak away into the ground, and obviously has been raised the possibility of pre-MOT cleaning of vehicles, which is an extensive process and produces an awful lot of oil, grease, brake dust, and other pollutants from the road, all going into a soak away. And I'm just not happy with it, and I'm minded to vote against this. Thank you.
Sorry, no, thank you, Matt. Okay, we've moved. Right. Yes, I do, please. Yes, I was trying to think of the points that were raised, but you've made a written note. That's fine. Thank you.
Sorry, it's me and my button now. It's an application to wash lorries. That could include the underside of the lorries. It's not been specifically pointed out, but it could include the underside of the lorries. To answer Councillor Higgins' point about is there another body or a second stage, I'm not aware there is a separate licence requirement for vehicle washing. In terms of dealing with the planning application, we do have policies that require us to consider the impact of a proposed development on the environment, including pollution by water or contaminated water. So that's why we've got condition 8 that requires details of the drainage system and interceptors to be submitted and agreed with the local planning authority. In assessing that condition and the details of it, we would consult experts in that field, and they would be our environment team who specialise in looking at pollution, and also the League Local Flood Authority. So we would consult them before deciding whether we were happy with the details that have been submitted by the applicant to discharge that condition. I think that's it. I think those are the only 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. You still look a little puzzled, Councillor Higgins. No, it should go, yes. I'm coming back. I've got a list of members. I'm coming back to you because you look very puzzled.
Yes, I think so. Oh.
No. There you go. That's it. You're on.
I'm really sorry because I'm sure you're being as clear to me as possible, and it's my fog that won't get through this. So we are, if we approved this, then there is a possibility that those chemicals could be damaging, but they would still be able to operate. Can you just be really clear on that, please?
I think we're going to come back on that point before I move on my list. Okay, so Rachel, please.
I think hopefully this will help. There is a separate regime for hazardous substances. So on that list, I'm not a chemist, don't ask me to give you an example, but there is a prescribed list of substances that are hazardous that need a separate consent to planning permission. So if your concern is about whether a harmful chemical could be used at this vehicle washing plant, if it was hazardous, it would need a separate permission for that. Our interest is ensuring that any wastewater coming from the washing facility has to be properly filtered before it goes into the environment. So we don't need to ask what chemicals are you going to use to clean these vehicles, because if they're hazardous, a separate regime exists for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Higgins. Right, Councillor Sayer. Councillor
Thank
Sayer,
you.
please.
Yeah, just a small point about these hazardous chemicals that may be used, and it's referred to as in condition 8. But when you read condition 8, it just says the planning authority is showing the means to prevent the discharge of surface water. It only mentions surface water. It doesn't mention anything about interceptors there. Condition 8 doesn't say anything about getting rid of the water used from the washing. It only mentions surface water from the site.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sayer. Councillor Ball, please.
I nearly pressed it then. Thank you, Chair. These lorries at the moment are being washed out at a Bury St Edmunds place for lorry washing. Presumably that had permission given by us however many years ago, with the same sort of conditions that we're wanting to put on here about looking after the pollutants and stuff like that. And I presume we've had no problems there. So I have some, reasonably contented that whatever we've implemented at that site works, and that we're covering it with our planning system for this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would pick up on what Councillor Sayer was saying, that condition 8 has nothing to do with pollutants. It's there really just to prevent the hazards caused by flowing water or ice on the highway. So runoff of surface water, that it doesn't address in any way, shape or form what is actually going to be sucking into the ground. So I am still very much not happy with it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whittam. I've got Councillor Neil, and then we'll go back to officers. Councillor Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. For 27 years, I've sold cleaning supplies and I've sold vehicle wash detergents, and they are a hazardous chemical in their neat form. But obviously, once diluted down at the lance, at the point of pressure washing, then they're not. Now, I saw a picture of a 1,000 litre tank on the presentation. Should there be a spillage of that neat product, then you've got a hazardous product that's going into the drainage system. And I didn't see, looking at that 1,000 litre tank, I didn't see anything retaining around that, should there be a spillage to contain that in its neat form. Just thought I'd bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. And Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm getting confused with this, I must admit. We're talking about the 15 vehicles that the applicant has declared his company has. Why are we putting in a major plant like this for 15? It seems a bit overkill, so viability is a question with that. The other thing is, of course, it's a wheel wash facility we're looking at. We're also looking at the driver's facility, but it seems to be more interest in the wheel wash. I would have thought the wheel wash should actually be where the vehicle is about to enter the highway from wherever it's going to get into the state it needs it. You only got to look at Brandon High Street, dare I mention it, to realise that there's a problem and the wheels should be washed before the vehicle leaves the dirty whatever it is it's coming from. This seems rather pointless because they're going to drive all the way there from wherever, shaking all the muck off on the road as they go, and then do the wheel wash. Doesn't seem to be a whole point in doing that. I noticed condition 12 states the proposed development, lorry wash and driver facilities building, hereby approved. Doesn't mention the lorry park, the car park, etc. that's on the site, which appears to be quite a large chunk of the 15 vehicles that they've got in operation. Things don't add up. And then there was the comment about customers, that customers wouldn't be able to turn up on the spur of the moment, which for me inferred that they must book before they turn up. Now we're getting told there's no customers. I don't know who raised the situation with customers in the first place, but if there are no customers, if they're not going to be, why are we talking about them? It should never have risen in the first place, and I have a vague feeling that came from the applicant. But I'm confused. Nothing new.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. I think you've made some notes to respond generally to the questions. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. The questions about interceptors and also about containing concentrated cleaning products if they're tanked. I just draw members' attention to condition 11, which does deal with a strategy for disposal of surface water. It's at the bottom of page 52. I think if it helps, we could probably make that clearer than it is by also referring to interceptors and any storage, any bonds around any storage tanks. So condition 11, disposal of surface water, a strategy for it, but also to include details of interceptors and any measures to prevent spillage from storage tanks. We'll add that into condition 11. Just to clarify a couple of comments from Councillor Thorndyke. You talked about a wheel wash, but the application is for a lorry wash, not just a wheel wash. And I think condition 11 is to restrict the use of the development. And I don't think we need to change that in any way. In brackets, it says the lorry wash and driver facilities, but that is what the proposed development is. And those were my only comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Councillor Lynch, please.
Thanks. I just wanted to address Councillor Thorndyke's misgivings. It sounded like you weren't sure about the economics of it. Why would it make sense? I just did some quick calculations, and if you just take into account the time saved for having a lorry drive 20 times a week to Bury St Edmunds, it'd be about 80 grand worth of money saved per year. So you can already see the economic argument for having it. And when you spoke about the customers, mention of the customers, it sounded like the architect was trying to anticipate the argument that that there would be customers. So he said there would be no customers, and you guys have got confused. So it's not, there's no customers at all. I think that's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Right. I'm now going to put the proposal to the committee subject. There's no further response required, is there, from officers? Right. It was proposed by Councillor Bull to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation, and that was seconded by Councillor Mildmay White. Can I see a show in hands in favour of approving the application, please? Oh. Can you just have a recount? Would you mind? Keep your hands up if it's for approval. And those against the... And the must be an abstention. Councillor Sayer, thank you.
Thank you. So that is 10 votes in favour and 3 votes against and 1 abstention. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you, Claire, and we have a change. Councillor Higgins, it's just gone 12. Thank you for joining us. Okay, that's fine. We are definitely close. we turn our attention to... Yes, he's left, yes. Yeah. Both Ian and Donna have given their apologies. So now we turn our attention to item 7, which is the land adjacent to the Duke of Marlborough in Hepworth. And Connor is the presenting officer, and you begin when you... Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. So the application before you seeks planning permission for a single-storey detached dwelling situated within designated countryside on land previously forming part of the Duke of Marlborough Public House, which has now been converted into 4 dwellings. The application has been referred to Development Control Committee via delegation panel and is recommended for refusal. So the map before you shows the site itself just off-centre. I'll just highlight that with the laser pointer there. And the surrounding pattern of development can be seen as well. You can see the terrace of 4 dwellings forming part of the Duke of Marlborough pub just to the west of the site. There's a further 3 dwellings to the southwest and another 3 southeast on the opposite side of the A143. Development is generally sparsely distributed and there is no clear or cohesive pattern of development. Moving on to the location plan submitted with the application, you can see the site highlighted in red there, with the aforementioned cottages within the wide ownership of the landowner to the west. The site would utilise an existing access from Berry Road, which you can see just to the south on that red line boundary there. And I'll also clarify that as well when we get to the site photographs. This slide has been included to provide some context. The actual appeal decision for this dismissed appeal is working paper 1, which is at the end of the report for this specific application. But the site has previously been the subject of a dismissed appeal. So this was an outline application which did have a marginally larger red line but encompassed the entire site currently proposed. The application proposed 6 dwellings with associated landscaping, parking and some affordable housing units, but was ultimately dismissed by the Planning Inspectorate. Of course, the appeal is at the end as working paper 1 within the reports pack, but I've summarised their comments there with the bullet points on the right-hand side. So with reference to DM27, the site wasn't considered to be in a closely knit cluster. It's not an infill plot. Evidently, it's not a singular nor a pair of semi-detached dwellings, and the modest landscaping benefits were not enough to outweigh the clear policy conflict within the development plan. Moving on to the proposed block plan for the current application, you can see it's a single detached dwelling located pretty centrally within the current red line attributed to the application. We have landscaping indicatively highlighted on the plans there to all boundaries. The bus shelter, which is also forming part of the application, is seen just off the access from Berry Road to the south there. We don't have any specific details with that, but of course have some supplementary statements provided by the agent, which have been assessed by the Highway Authority and are discussed in the officer's report. But the bus shelter, to clarify, would upgrade an existing bus stop along Berry Road, and it wouldn't form, for example, a new bus stop. Onto the elevation, so the dwelling would be single storey, approximately 5.5 metres in total height. We've got brick walls and clay pantiles to the roof, but otherwise quite a modest dwelling. And onto the floor plans, so the dwelling would effectively have 3 bedrooms, with that snug/study being similar to size of bedroom 2. Have an entrance hall, kitchen, utility and bathroom. Onto the site photographs now. So the first is taken from that existing entrance which would be utilised looking west along Berry Road. The 4 cottages in the former public house in the background there, with the site itself just coming into shot on the right-hand side. Now looking northeast into the site itself, so standing at what would be the southern boundary. As stated, this sort of hard landscaping that you can see did form part of the car park which formerly served the Duke of Marlborough Public House. Now looking northwest with those cottages coming into view again. And now lastly looking back southwest. This is the first of 2 site visit videos. So this one panning around from Berry Road, starting southeast. Then ending looking west. And the second is just from inside the site itself, starting looking northeast. Onto the consultee comments. So no objections have been raised by any of our consultees. The parish council commented on the first round of consultation. We did receive an additional statement from the agent regarding the bus shelter, so clarification on management, for example, and the submission of details, but no further comments have been received from the parish. No formal comments from the ward member, but of course Councillor Bull is here today and attended the delegation panel meeting. And lastly, we've received no comments from any local residents. On to officer comments, starting with the in principle policy and reason for refusal. So as the site is within designated countryside and proposes a single residential dwelling, policies DM5 and DM27 apply. So I've just highlighted there the 2 key criterion for policy DM27. So first, that new dwellings will be permitted in the countryside subject to satisfying the following criteria. The first being that development is within a closely knit cluster of 10 or more existing dwellings adjacent to or fronting an existing highway. And the second being that the scale of development consists of infilling a small undeveloped plot by one dwelling or a pair of semi-detached dwellings commensurate with the scale and character of existing dwellings within an otherwise continuous built-up frontage. As you will have seen from the location plans and photographs, the plot is expansive and does not represent an infill, given there are no dwellings to the east of the site. The site is also not within a closely knit cluster of 10 or more dwellings. Referring back to that appeal decision, most recently that outline appeal was, the outline was refused and the appeal subsequently dismissed, where the planning inspector noted that there are a few dwellings sited in the vicinity of the appeal site, including those at the converted public house, but these are reasonably spread out and do not form a closely knit cluster. Furthermore, policy DM5 does not list the redevelopment of previously developed land as one of the circumstances where housing in a countryside can be justified. The site is also not considered to be within a sustainable location, given the reliance on the motor vehicle to access the site. The planning inspector also previously concluded that services and facilities in the nearby settlements of Wattsfield, Hepworth and Stanton are beyond a comfortable walk due to the distance, the busy nature of the A143 and the speed of traffic. It was therefore concluded that that proposal could not gain support from policy DM27, DM5, and this is reapplied for this application. Of course, the application further proposes the installation of a bus shelter to upgrade an existing bus stop point, and the applicant and agent argued that the environmental and social benefits attributed to the scheme outweigh the policy conflict. Officers do not agree. The planning inspectorate had identified the locational unsustainability of the site in relation to policies DM5 and 27. Just to clarify again, the supplementary statement has been provided by the agent regarding the location of the bus shelter at the Highway Authority and Parish Council's request. No comments have been received from the parish in relation to the statement. The bus shelter would be situated on land owned by the applicant, and maintenance would be at their expense, not that of the Highway Authority. However, the Highway Authority raises no objections to the provision of a privately owned bus shelter, subject to further details being submitted to the local planning authority, secured via condition. The planning inspector stated in the appeal for the previous outline that the modest ecological, economic and environmental benefits attributed to that scheme would not be sufficient to outweigh the policy conflict. With reference to this application, no concerns are raised by the consultees regarding other material planning considerations. However, the modest environmental and social benefits are not considered to outweigh the clear policy conflict identified. The application is therefore contrary to policies DM5 and DM27 and is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much indeed. Connor? Right, we've got two registered speakers. We've got Councillor Carol Bull, who is a member of the committee, but is the ward member. And we've got Phil Cobbold, agent for the applicant. So, Councillor Bull, please. You're going to have to press it again because there's nothing happening. Just
Fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Parish Council. The Duke of Marlborough pub closed quite a few years ago, but in 2016 it was granted change of use, and permission was given to convert it to the 4 dwellings, which you saw in the photographs. And while the loss of pub was regretted by Hepworth, they found that 4 homes there was infinitely preferable to an empty building deteriorating. But the Duke of Marlborough, as you again will have seen from the photograph, sits on a very large plot, and most of the bit that's left after the housing is a huge hard-standing car park. It wasn't included in the development. It's still in the belongs to the original owner, and it remains there. There was that planning application in 2018 for 6 dwellings, and this was refused. And I think at the time the Parish Council didn't really support it because they thought it was over development there. And there have been a number of thoughts about the use of the land, and I do believe the owner has at times engaged with the planning department to see what could be done with this large piece of hardcore. This application has now come forward for a modest dwelling, and whilst it is appreciated that the land is designated countryside, it is just a huge car park. It has little aesthetic value, and by and large, the Parish Council consider that one dwelling on the site would not have an adverse impact on the character of the area, but actually would be an improvement. And they would hope this would go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. Phil, you've got your 3 minutes, sir.
I'm not going to try and argue that this is in accordance with the infill policy. It clearly isn't. I accept that this proposal is contrary to the development plan, but in my opinion, there are material considerations which should be taken into account which justify departure from the plan. The first is the reason behind the application, and that is that the current condition of the land is preventing the owner of the cottages in the former public house from selling the properties. The cottages have been unsuccessfully marketed by a number of agents and auction sites since May 2022, and the feedback from the selling agents is that the visual appearance of the car park and the uncertainty of its future is putting off prospective purchasers, and this is confirmed by the letters from the agents that we've submitted with the application. We believe that erecting a modest bungalow on the site, together with the associated landscaping, will not only improve the amenity of the area for the existing residents, but it will also address concerns about how the land could be developed and used in the future. With regards to the local planning policies, really the objectives of those relevant planning policies is to protect the countryside from unsustainable development. This proposal is sustainable development as it involves the reuse of previously developed land, and the site is accessible by public transport. There are bus stops at the site providing 7 services per day to Stanton, Bury St Edmunds and Diss. Excuse me. And as you've heard, the scheme also includes a bus shelter as a social benefit. The bus shelter will not provide any financial burden on the highway authority as it's on private land, so it's something that will be maintained by the applicant, and it's something which could be controlled by a condition. The applicant considers that the restoration of the land and the improvements to residential and visual amenity that would arise, combined with the excellent public transport opportunities, are positive factors which weigh in favour of the development and justify departure from the development plan. I note what has been said about that appeal decision, but this is just for one modest bungalow, it's not for 6 dwellings. And I don't believe that the inspector gave sufficient weight to the public transport opportunities provided by the bus stops nearby. Ultimately, the erection of a modest bungalow on this site would not cause any material harm to any interests of acknowledged importance. It wouldn't harm visual amenity, it wouldn't harm residential amenity, it wouldn't harm highway safety, but it would improve the local environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. Right, Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to support Councillor Bull in what she said. I think that although the officers have recommended refusal, because that is what all our planning policies say, I do think that this site is exceptional circumstances. At the moment, the whole visual area is absolutely appalling with this great big car park, and if nothing is developed there, it will just remain this great big hard standing place. I think one modest bungalow there, it will actually improve the whole visual aspect of the area. I think the fact that somebody will be there with a garden means that the environment will be improved with the ecology and improvement for wildlife diversity in that way. And I can understand why our policies say that we should not support this application, but I do feel that one modest bungalow can do nothing but improve the area as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. Councillor Chester, press your button, because when you indicated no, you're not speaking.
We have lifted off.
On my list. No, Councillor Chester, you're not speaking. It's just that you put your hand up, and you should be pressing your button to speak. Yeah, and you're not. You're now registered on my list. But when you put your hand up earlier, you were number 4. Now you're number 7. That's right. Yes, but I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Sayer. That was the. Yeah. So, Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with the previous speakers that this looks like a blot on the landscape, and anything would be an improvement to what we have at the moment. I do have some questions about the bus stop with shelter. Because it's a busy road, do you think they could possibly stretch it so it's a lay-by and the buses are off the traffic? And also pavements accessing it. Those are a couple of questions. But other than that, I cannot see any reason why this shouldn't go ahead, and I'd like to propose it for acceptance.
Okay, I've got that. Is that seconded, please, Councillor Whittam? I mean, we are going to need reasons to overturn an officer's decision. So can you try and articulate, Councillor Waldron and maybe Councillor Whittam, your reason for overturning the decision?
An improvement for the environment.
Yeah.
Better landscaping.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything to add to that, Councillor Whittam?
Yeah, a better amenity for those living in the area. It is sustainable with the transport links and by bus. And whilst I take on board what is said about DM27 in a closely knit in a rural location is not the same as closely knit in an urban location. And to my opinion, there are 12 dwellings already in the local proximity. So my loose interpretation would give it that it is in a cluster, although rural and not confined in a small place like a high street. So
thank you, Councillor Button.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I used to use the Duke of Marlborough many, many moons ago, and an excellent carvery. And we also used to have meetings there to consider the London food waste and the flies across the road. Thankfully now gone. It's a bit vague because having been a ward member for that patch many moons ago, I took a bit of interest and I read the planning statement provided by the applicant, who tells me that the Duke of Marlborough is in Stanton. Must have been talking about a different one to this. And various other bits about it. Stanton does not have an adopted neighbourhood plan. I can't think what that's to do with Hepworth. But the current condition of the land is preventing the owner of the cottages in the former public house from selling the cottages. When were they built, rebuilt, Councillor Ball? The feedback from the selling agents is that the condition of the car park and the uncertainty of its future is putting off prospective purchases. I don't think that's really a reason why we should be granting permission. I'm sorry, those 4 cottages are there in their own right. The other thing that worries me is we've got a full application. We're talking about a bus shelter. We've got absolutely no details of the bus shelter, where exactly it's going to sit. And from what I can understand, there's been no contact with the bus company. Now, as you and I and Councillor Bull knows, there are changes coming with the bus service, and logic would seem to me that if you're going to have something like this, I mean, currently there are no pull-offs for the buses. They stop at the side of the road, both sides, and it's a little bit hazardous unless you happen to know that the buses are likely to stop there. But there appears to have been no contact with the bus company, and logic says that would have taken place. But I'm at a loss to see where the bus shelter is going to go, and we've got a full planning application. Surely, if it's on the private land, we should have details of the bus shelter included.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think, given our current policies, I can absolutely understand how officers recommended refusal for this. I think that is more a statement of the fact that we have a hole in our policies when it comes to rural brownfield sites, rather than this specific application itself. I genuinely can't think of anything else that we could do with this site, and one single modest bungalow seems to me to be a reasonable thing to do with this that will improve the area. I'm just wondering whether this might be something that we can take as a learning objective and possibly develop an SPD or something such that our policies are tight for future situations such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to talk about this application and the bus shelter. I have never, since I've been sitting on this committee, I've never known an application come through for a private application to include a bus shelter. It does say on page 61, Suffolk County Council would like would like to have some contact, but it was said that the bus shelter would be maintained by the applicant. Well, we don't know what would happen in the future. If we approve this application today, I presume we are the bus shelter would be part of the approval of the application. I just find that all a little bit weird. Has it been put in this application to do sort of enhance that they wish to have a bungalow built on this plot? I've listened to all my members talk about how it would enhance the plot and be much better than what is there now. I accept that, but I just find this bus shelter idea, I find it weird. And so I'd like a little bit more clarification, or I can't support this with this bus shelter being there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor Marmay-White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say that under our present policies, I can't support this application either, but I do understand exactly the reasons for Councillor Bull's support for the parish council. It is a wasteland, basically, at the moment. And I feel that actually if the applicant waits a year or so, under present government suggestions, this will be a greyfield site, won't it? And I would suggest it comes back in the future when we know what the government's intentions are, and also a bit more clarification about the bus shelter, because it is unusual to have a privately owned bus shelter. And in addition, the bus services are under review, so who knows if there'll even be a bus there. I wouldn't classify it as sustainable because it is just in the middle of nowhere, basically. Well, it's a long way to walk if you get off the bus there and you want to go to Hepworth. I don't know how you get down the A134 and then into A143 rather, and then into Hepworth. It's not a safe route. So my suggestion with this needs to come back in a year or two's time with a proper link to the village, a proper information about a bus and a bus shelter. But at the moment, I can't support this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marmay-White. And we've eventually got to you, Councillor Chester.
And I'm live. Thank you, Chair.
That's okay.
First observation is it's unfortunate, really, that the proposed site here wasn't offered as amenity land for the 4 cottages that might have made them easier to sell. The other point is the previous appeal refusal sends out a strong message, from my perspective. I consider this to be development in the countryside and cannot support approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do support this, but I do understand the policy constraints. I don't support it on the premise that the cottages will be easier to sell. That has got nothing to do with it. I mainly support it because it's an eyesore, and I think this would improve the area. On the bus stop, there is already a bus stop there. And this is a bus shelter they want to put there. So it's not, so I don't know why there needs to be a discussion with the bus company, because there is a bus stop there. And if we're considering whether it's any place is sustainable and we start looking at the bus services, we never know what's going to happen, and there are changes afoot in this area, but you could say that of anywhere that has buses, and we can only accept things as they are. I think Councillor Marmay-White is right that this would probably go through if we have the new government changes and it's considered a grey area. I still think there is a little bit of strength to this is in a cluster of, I think, 12 houses. I didn't realise there were as many as that. I think it was, to be pragmatic, that I think eventually it will go through, but that perhaps would be too much for us to push it through now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bull. I've got Councillor Thorndyke, and then I'm going to come back to Connor and to Rachel, OK? So Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Marmay-White and Councillor Bull have just made reference to government changes. There are no government changes yet. There is a national planning policy framework which is out for consultation. So no changes. So we are working surely on the 2023 NPPF, not speculation on what might be coming.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Right, officers, please. Connor?
Yes, I think the main point I just want to clarify is regarding the bus shelter and the details we have currently. obviously Councillor Bull is right. There are two bus stops, so one either side of the road, and the shelter would be an upgrade, presumably, to the existing bus stop there. I'll just turn members' attention to, I think it's paragraph 61 on page 69, which talks about the bus shelter in a little bit more detail, but mainly due to at the bottom of the page, where it says the Highway Authority raises no objection to the provision of a privately owned bus shelter, subject to further details being submitted. So we could secure that via condition. We do obviously have the indicative location of the bus shelter on the plans, but we don't have any elevations or any further details. That all said, there is no obligation thereafter for any bus services to utilise the shelter, so that would be something that they would need to discuss with the companies. And then no indication before us that any bus service will use it, but of course, like I said, there are two services either side. And of course, just to reiterate, obviously it's noted the wider sort of environmental benefits and social with the bus shelter improvement associated with the scheme. But again, these are not considered to outweigh the clear policy conflict which the application proposes. Thank you.
Chair, so at the moment we've got a proposal to approve that's been seconded, and I've noted down members have said that they consider that these considerations would outweigh the policy objection in terms of DM5 and DM27, and that was based on improving the amenity and the environment of the site, and also improving the landscape around the site, and also taking into account that some members thought that the site was sustainable, given that it does have a bus service running near to the site. On that basis, if before you take the vote, I would say that this invokes the decision-making protocol. So it would be a minded to vote, and we would bring a report back to members on a risk assessment basis should the vote go through for minded to approve. And it would be an opportunity. I know Councillor Waldron had some questions about what the precise details of the bus shelter would entail. It would give us an opportunity to perhaps get any further information from the applicant at that stage too. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a very quick question about the bus stop. Obviously, we have the bus stop on the road. We have a proposed bus shelter. Just to assume, I realise I'm assuming that the bus shelter is proposed to be on the private land behind the bus stop, and just to confirm that it's not going to be causing confusion by being somewhere else on the road front.
Connor, can you respond to that, please?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in line where the existing bus stop is. Myself and Councillor Ball had actually quite a bit of difficulty finding the existing bus stops anyway, but they are there. And yeah, it is presumed that this would just be an upgrade. Obviously, have a shelter for users of the bus stop, but yeah, it wouldn't be interfering with another.
Thank you, Connor. Right, members, this now is a minded to approve vote proposed by Councillor Waldron and seconded by Councillor Whittam, and Rachel summarised what the proposer and seconder's views were in terms of reasons for refusal. So could I now see a show of hands in favour of a minded to approve, which means if that succeeds, it'll be back in committee. So minded to approve. And those against? And abstentions, please. Okay. So that's a casting vote for the chair. Just give me a second, just to get my head around this one. I'm going to refuse this particular. I'm going to vote in favour of refusal. Sorry. Yes, sorry, vote against the approval is what I mean, because I'm convinced in the arguments that say we have to judge this against our current policies and not anything that might happen in the future. So I'm casting my vote against the proposal.
So that is 5 votes in favour and 6 votes against with 2 abstentions, so the motion is lost.
So we have to look for another motion. Any of the members prepared? Councillor Mildmay White.
Move refusal of this application.
Is that seconded, please? Councillor Chester, thank you. I'm going to just make a note. Are any members wishing to contribute to this point, or should I just go? No, I'm just going to go straight then for. It's now been recommended for refusal in line with the officer's recommendation by Councillor Mildmay White, and that was seconded by Councillor Chester. Could I see a show of hands in favour of refusal, please? And those against the proposal? An abstention, please. Right, I've never been in this situation before.
Lost and the debate continues.
Yes, I realise that. Yeah, yes, yes.
5-6.
22 announcements.
Yeah.
I've got 5.
Yeah, yes.
Do you want me to announce?
Would you please announce? We might have to have a comfort break. No, it's okay.
Okay, so that is 5 votes in favour, 6 votes against and 1 abstention, so that motion is also lost.
We had 5, 6 and 2 last time, and we've now got 5, 6 and 1.
The 6 on the first vote was the chair's casting vote, so total 6, because in effect the chair votes twice.
Oh, right.
Yeah, yeah.
But we had 2 abstentions first time.
Correct, and you had, yeah, you had 1, they will be 1 extra for the first
Oh,
vote, because the chair voted twice. Yeah, yeah, he did.
Listen, we can either go round again, but my judgment is it's unlikely to change where we are, or alternatively, a deferral, which would bring us back to committee anyway. Does count? You look puzzled, Councillor Thorndyke.
Yeah, I am puzzled. What was the vote on the second time round without the chair's casting vote?
It didn't need one, Jim. There were 6 people who voted against the motion. 6 members, I should say. Yeah.
So if we got 6 voted against, how many voted for? 5?
Yeah.
So we're done.
The motion's lost. The motion was lost. No, you haven't, the motion lost. 5 were voting in favour of refusal, 6 voted against. The motion was therefore lost.
So we neither had a majority for minded to approve, and the refusal lost 6 votes to 5. So we haven't actually got a decision. My suggestion is we can either go round again, but my judgment as chair is that's unlikely to change this rapidly, or alternatively, we can have a deferral if someone proposes and seconds it.
What purpose would we defer?
Well, I would treat it, excuse me a second, I'm just. Okay, you can see this has caused a little bit of an issue up here. Right. The alternative would be to vote again on the minded to, I'll get this right, approve the application, which has the same effect as a deferral, but it would need a majority, obviously, to do that. Have I made myself clear? Councillor Thorndike.
I don't think it is the same, actually, because if we vote for deferral, it then means that various things can get brought into it that a refusal and a minded to can't. Refusal and minded to is just specifics, reasons. If you're doing deferral, you widen out what you can talk about. So a deferral would be preferable.
Yeah. I know you had your hand up, Councillor, but can you press your microphone if you want to speak? Yeah. Because I've got Councillor Waldron before you, that's all. Councillor Waldron.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, can we do a referral subject to information on the bus shelter, pavements, etc.?
Might as well do a deferral.
Thank you.
Right, there might be a solution. Just let me explain. Is to go through the minded to approve vote again, because that in itself would bring the application back to committee for future consideration by Development Control. It is possible that might succeed this time. If it doesn't, and then we go, and then we are back where we are. Hang on a second. Press your button, Mike. I've got, yeah. Okay, Councillor London.
Just before we continue, I'd like to know what's happened to the motion that was proposed by Councillor Waldron. We haven't seconded it or moved forward with that, so I just want to know is that a substantive motion that we're currently on?
Sorry, I hadn't accepted it as a substantive motion because we were still debating what was the most appropriate way. It's not to dismiss Councillor Waldron's sensible suggestion. It was just that we were still a little bit uncertain on the way forward.
In that case, with apologies, just to keep things moving, I will, in alignment with the suggestion, propose a motion to accept with the understanding that will then probably bring this forward as a decision at the next council, if that is the best course of action.
I think it could be.
Vote again.
So for my understanding, we are voting for approval on the understanding that if this is accepted, it will then enact the decision-making protocol and will come back again at the next council meeting, which is a cleaner way than doing a deferral, which would then allow us to, at the next council meeting, possibly be in the same situation and bring it forward again and keep going around in circles.
Yeah,
Future meeting, sorry.
Future meeting.
Future, sorry, future.
That was where we were heading here.
Yeah.
It might be a cleaner solution to go through the vote again for a minded to approve. That then triggers a risk assessment report, which in turns will provide additional information that may not be triggered if we went for a straightforward deferral. So yes, your summary was right. So I'm going to go back to the proposal by Councillor Waldron which would be a minded to approve the application, and that was seconded by Councillor Whittam. And I'm going to.
Chair, we need a new one. We need a new.
Oh, sorry, I beg your
So
pardon.
Councillor London's now made it, and we need a second. Now we need a seconder for it. For Councillor London. Yeah.
Well, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, just to explain to
We'll
you.
go out and come back in.
John Malcolm didn't actually make a proposal, he asked a question.
Okay. Right. Can I see if there's a proposer, please, for a second minded to approve? Councillor Waldron. Could I see if that's seconded? Councillor Whittam. Right. I think the ducks are in a row, but who knows? So let me then put that proposal to the committee. It's now been proposed by Councillor Waldron to refuse, but it's a minded to refusal, and seconded by Councillor Whittam. I'm finally for approval. And that's been seconded by Councillor Whittam, and I'm just hoping this one comes to a conclusion. So could I see a show of hands in favour, please, of the motion? Okay. Look, I'm gonna vote for this one. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day.
Those against.
And those against, please. Right.
Abstention.
And an abstention somewhere. Thank you.
Right, okay. So, that is 6 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 1 abstention. The motion is carried, the decision-making protocol is in vote, and the minded to decision will be subject to a risk assessment for future consideration by the committee.
Yes. I was about to say thank you, members. Yes. All I say is thank you to 2 officers who are very kind and supportive. Okay. Oh. Of course you can. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Go on. Yes.
Right.
Well, we're now moving on to the Gas House Drove. Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to declare an interest in this item in as much as I'm Chair of Brandon Town Council. However, I do not sit on Brandon Town Council's Planning Committee, which is a decision-making body within itself, so I have no knowledge of this other than what I have in front of me and knew that there was a development going there, so I can be totally impartial in my appraisal of this issue.
Thank you. I'm sure Claire will respond.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam, for declaring that in the interest of openness and transparency. From what you've said, and provided you have an open mind, I don't see that it precludes you from taking part.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, so this is Gas House Drove, the bungalow, and Connor is presenting this one as well. Good luck, Connor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application before you seeks planning permission for one dwelling situated within designated countryside. Officers have identified conflict with policy DM27, more specifically with regards to the size of the plot. However, given the benefits attributed to the scheme, these are considered to outweigh the conflict identified. So therefore, this application represents a departure from the development plan, hence why it's before you today. And officers are therefore minded to approve the application. So the map before you provides some wider context regarding the location of the site. So the green area to the north signifies the designated countryside. You've then obviously got the red line to the south, and then everything to the northwest and south of that represents the settlement boundary. The site itself, I've indicated by the sort of the red circle there, and the line as the crow flies represents the distance to the Brandon High Street and town centre. So some members may have parked in Aldi on the site visit on Monday. So this is just to the west here. So just to give a bit of context regarding connectivity and accessibility of the site. The second slide is a close-up of the site itself. So again, showing the site in relation to the settlement boundary, which abuts the site to the south. You can see the site is partially within flood zone 2 as per the Environment Agency's flood mapping software. The site sits in between two dwellings. So you've got the bungalow itself to the west, and then the willows to the east. The building here is a stables, which again members may have noted on the site visit. The site is accessed via Gas House Drove, which is a byway open to all traffic, which is that pink hashed line to the south there. Onto the location plan and existing block plan. So members can see the site again would be accessed via an existing track. The applicant on the site visit allowed some members to park on this track. It's obviously differentiated by a gate. But yeah, you can see again the stables to the north, the willows and the bungalow to the west. So the proposed block plan shows the location of the dwelling to the northeast of the site, with the width and depth of the dwelling itself similar to the bungalow and the willows. I've also added the flood zone 2 layer again on the right hand side, which indicates that the dwelling would fall partially within that zone. However, as stated within the committee report, the applicant has submitted a site-specific flood risk assessment, which illustrates that the ground level in which the proposed dwelling would be situated is analogous with the levels of land otherwise within flood zone 1. We haven't received any formal comments from the Environment Agency, but I have engaged in discussions with them and they are content with that conclusion. In any event, as per the flood risk assessment, the finished floor levels for the bungalow would be 150 millimetres above that level anyway. So again, to mitigate any flood risk concerns. Moving on to the elevation, so you can see the dwelling would be single storey with that larger element to the northeast edge of the site, and then a subservient element on the western side. And we have a proposed street scene as well, so you can see the overall scale and mass is comparable to the dwellings either side. Onto the proposed floor plan, so you can see an open living, kitchen and dining room to the rear. We do have 4 bedrooms and a larger office, so effectively 5 bedrooms, with 2 bathrooms and an ensuite for the master bedroom as well. Here we have an indicative landscaping plan, which has been submitted alongside an arboricultural impact assessment, which has been considered acceptable by our arboricultural and landscaping consultants. No trees are proposed to be felled, and a detailed soft landscaping scheme would be conditioned as part of an approval. The plan also indicates the access point via the existing track to the southwest and illustrates sufficient on-site parking for the dwelling. On to some site photographs. So the first taken from Gashouse Drove, looking northwest into the site. So the stables are in view in the background, with the willows just in view on the right-hand side there. Now looking northeast. Back looking west with the bungalows on the left-hand side there. Those are the ones within the settlement boundary. And now standing within that existing access, looking back northeast towards the willows. And finally, looking back along Gashouse Drove to the west, where you can see some of the 2-storey dwellings within the settlement boundary coming into view there. Just the one site visit video. This panning around from the southeastern edge towards the stables and then back towards the starting point. There you can see the bungalows within the settlement boundary. On to consultee comments. So no objections from any consultees, subject to the conditions included within the report on pages 96 to 103. Brandon Town Council's Planning Committee support the application. No formal ward member comments have been received. We have received 3 letters from local residents from 2 different addresses, so one commenting twice. One stating they have no concerns and the other objecting. The concerns raised in the objection concern loss of privacy via overlooking. This is one of the bungalows within the settlement boundary opposite the site, and also regarding arboricultural impacts, which, as I've stated, have been considered to be acceptable. So to summarise, the application proposes a single-storey detached dwelling within designated countryside. Policy DM27 requires dwellings in the countryside to infill a small undeveloped plot of land with a single detached or pair of semi-detached dwellings within a closely knit cluster of 10 or more dwellings. As I stated at the start, officers have identified conflict with both criterion 1 and 2, noting the expansive width of the plot, which is significantly larger than plots in the settlement boundary to the south and the plots either side of the site. As a result, it is considered to be a departure from the development plan, as the proposal does not meet the spatial policies that seek to guide the location of new housing developments. As set out within this report, it is considered that significant weight can be attached to the identified benefits of the proposal, considering the modest countryside land that is being extended into in order to facilitate the development, and is in an area that locationally can be considered to be well related to the town of Brandon and its services. Whilst conflict with the M27 has been identified with the width of the plot, as well as there being modest visual erosion of the rural character of the site. The proposal is otherwise considered to be in a sustainable location, noting the byway immediately abutting the site, and of course the settlement boundary itself abutting the site. Brandon High Street is approximately 0.7 kilometres west of the site, accessible by foot. And with the proposed dwelling otherwise being readily, I've just said that. Furthermore, sustainable landscaping and a modestly scaled but also high quality design of the dwelling is proposed to help screen and mitigate the visual impact of the proposal. And lastly, we have a slide showing the planning balance. So obviously against, we have the conflict with policies DM5 and DM27, and of course the modest visual erosion and urbanisation to that character. To summarise the reasons in favour of the proposal, as I've stated, the site abuts the settlement boundary. It does infill a plot, whether it's small is of course subjective, with the dwellings either side of the site. We do have a well-designed residential layout and high-quality design. The site has good connectivity. There are sustainability benefits via the ecological and arboricultural enhancements. No adverse impacts to highway safety, and the site is demonstrated to be in flood zone 1. So officers are minded to approve the application.
Excuse me. Thank you, Colin. There are no public speakers or indeed any statements to be read out by Helen, so it's straight into the committee discussion. Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know every application has to be decided on its own merits with no reference to any other, but this following on from the previous one, it conflicts with DM27 and DM5. I have to say I support this. I just find it very difficult that we can have one going one way and one going the other. I would like to understand, it says that there are benefits of this and that's why it is acceptable. I would like to know what the benefits are. Thank you.
Yes, I did have a thought that you might raise that, as will others, I'm sure. Councillor Whittam, please.
I'd like to propose that we accept this application for approval on the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that, please? Can I go to Councillor Bull, because at least there's a chance you might secure. Right. Any other comment? Oh, Councillor Waldron, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, basically, I see no problem with it at all. Okay, lack of view or amenity for the buildings opposite. If the menage is no longer used, it's a perfectly adequate place to build a nice little house. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Right, I'm going to strike because there's no one waiting to... Are there any officer responses? Oh, there is actually, before I... Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely right, each application on its own merits. And I'll ask Connor to just elaborate a bit more on what he's mentioned in his presentation as benefits. I would say the significant difference between this site and the previous site are the locational differences. So this is on the edge of a market town, which you can walk to the high street safely within less than half a mile, immediately adjacent to the development boundary. So quite different, sustainable locational circumstances to the previous one. And I would suggest that that's what sets the two apart. But I'll pass over to Connor just to expand a little bit more on the benefits in his presentation.
So as Rachel said, there's obviously some locational differences, which if you're talking about a scale, one goes one way, the other goes the other. There are obviously benefits attributed to this as well. Not saying there aren't with the previous application, but of course, again, when we're talking about a scale, it shifts it one way. So ecological benefits, which we would include via a condition, ecological enhancement. We've got the high quality design of the dwelling. Obviously, arboricultural benefits as well. Soft landscaping scheme would be conditioned. So, and then again, connectivity, parking, etc. So it's all those factors that in themselves might be small, but collectively will contribute to quite an attractive scheme. And we feel that yes, whilst the proposal doesn't comply with DM5 and DM27, the locational sustainability and those benefits do sway this in recommending approval. So minded to approval.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, no members are indicating they wish to speak, so let me just go straight to the proposal, which was made by Councillor Whitton to approve in line with the officer's recommendation. That was seconded by Councillor Bull. Can I see a show of hands in favour, please, of that proposal? And those against?
That's 10 votes in favour and 1 vote against. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, members. The meeting is now at an end.